Welcome to Creative Arts Apothecary. I'm your host, Marina Tselner, and I am so happy and grateful and honored to introduce my guest, Dr. Eric Maisel. He is author of a few of my favorite books, Coaching the Artist Within, Advice for Writers, Actors, Visual Artists, and Musicians from America's Foremost Creativity Coach, and The Power of Daily Practice, how creative and performing artists and everyone else can finally meet their goals. Among, what is it 50 books now? He is the original creativity coach. Dr. Maisel, welcome.
Hi, Marina. It's great to be with you.
Good, a pleasure to speak with you today. Tell us, can you tell us a little bit about what you do as the original creativity coach? What is that? What is that?
Long time ago, as a boy, I thought I was a math and science kid. I started out in math and science, went to a math and science high school, thought I'd be a physicist. That stopped interesting me. Probably at about the same time I learned about girls, I stopped being interested in science. So I flunked out of college, flunked out of Brooklyn College. I started college very young at 16, too young. Flunked out, went into the Army. When I got out, of course, I had no idea what I was doing. So I did that thing you do when you have no idea what you're doing. I got a degree in philosophy. That was really useful. Yeah, incredibly useful. And I started writing fiction at about the age of 24. And I had a ghostwriting career. So I wrote books all through my 20s. They didn't make enough money. We had little kids. It wasn't really the authentic or honorable thing to do to keep making so little money. So I retooled and became a California licensed family therapist. But I quickly did not believe in the medical model of therapy, in the diagnosing and treating mental disorder model. So I wanted to get out of therapy almost as quickly as I got into it, but I didn't know exactly where to go. And I'd been interested in working with creative performing artists as a therapist. That was my specialty. I worked with artist couples as a specialty. So I segued out of therapy into what I called consulting, because coaching wasn't even a thing yet. There were football coaches and baseball coaches, but not life coaches yet. And so when coaching became a word, I segued from consulting to coaching, and called myself a creativity coach, and sort of invented this profession 30 years ago, some number of years ago. And that's what I've been doing since then, working as a creativity coach, training creativity coaches, working with creative and performing artists one-on-one and in groups and at workshops and all of that.
Fantastic. Yeah, really amazing. And you're so prolific. We spoke about this a little bit earlier. I didn't realize about your background, but I was wondering if you could speak to this, to what is it that drives you? How are you so prolific?
I think there are different sorts of answers, but one of the ones that strikes me as truest is that I was born right after World War II. I was born in 1947, right after the war, into a Jewish and Italian neighborhood with concentration camp survivors, and the war was on everybody's mind. And something about the phrase resistance fighter worked for me as a kid. I could picture those French resistance fighters in their cellars just waiting for the word to hop out of the cellar and blow up some German rail line. I think I've been resisting my whole life. I think that being that resistance fighter persona is what actually motivates me, because I see a lot of humbug out there, a lot of stuff I don't believe is true or not real enough or not deep enough. And so I want to put in my 2 cents about those things. And there are other reasons I stay curious. I'm curious about things. I have pretty good habits and all of that. There are other kinds of reasons, but I think the resistance fighter reason is actually the core reason. And that is, I, for some reason, just decided to put the world on my shoulders and take care of it.
Powerful, really powerful and inspiring. So what's the number one practical step a person can take to become more creative?
Start each day doing their work. So let me elaborate. It's a daily practice is the most important thing. It takes care of lots of the disincliners that we have in us, those places where we're not motivated, don't think we matter, find it all too hard. All of that is real. And the antidote to that is to know that we're showing up each day, come hell or high water. I think it needs to be a morning creativity practice, not just in any time of the day creativity practice, for three big reasons. One, if you show up every day, well, you'll get lots done. That's the obvious reason. If anybody were to show up 5 days a week at whatever they do, they would be truly productive and create a body of work over time. The second is not that well known to people, and that's that we think while we sleep. Everybody knows we dream while we sleep. Everybody knows about dreaming. We dream in REM sleep. We think in non-REM sleep. Our brain never shuts down. We'd be dead if it shut down. It works all night and does these two different things. It dreams and it thinks. Most people don't know that it thinks, and they don't make use of that thinking capability of the brain. But if you were to go to bed with a sleep thinking prompt, with a question, with a wonder, like, I wonder what Mary wants to say to John in chapter 3 of my novel, that kind of wonder what Mary and John want to talk about, your brain will work on that. And then if you turn to your work first thing, you can just take dictation. It's free creative time for a creative person through the night. Now, if you turn to the new day, you lose that sleep thinking. It evaporates. The second you think about all the chores and responsibilities of the new day, that sleep thinking vanishes. So that's why if you can get to your work, whatever your creative work is, and that kind of dream, clients will say to me, well, I'm not awake. And my answer is great. That's exactly what you want to be, not awake. You still want to be sort of dreamy, sort of connected to the night, because that's how you will get the information that your brain dreamed up during the night. So number one, you get a lot done. Number two, you make use of your sleep thinking. Number three is the existential reason, which is if you do some real work first thing each day, you'll have the experience of having made some meaning on that day. And the rest of the day can be half meaningless and you won't get depressed. If you try to do life the other way around, just do one sort of half meaningless thing after another, by the end of the day, we're too demoralized to do our creative work. We're tired, but we're also demoralized. So it's very hard for creative folks to get to their work in the evening. If they can, more power to them. But for most creatives, they have to institute this thing which may feel uncomfortable to them, namely getting to their creative work first thing. And because of my clientele is who it is, virtually every client I work with already has a morning practice. They do morning pages or yoga or Tai Chi or whatever. They're doing something already. I kind of have to ask them to move that to another part of the day. If they want to get their creative work done, morning pages need to be luncheon pages or evening pages. Needs to move. So many writers are using up all of their good words on their morning pages and their journaling and never getting their book written. So it's important that folks understand you can't really have so many multiple morning practices before your real day begins. And the most important one, you may decide the most important one is your meditation practice or whatever. That's maybe your decision. But you may want to think about maybe creating being that most important first thing activity.
So juicy, really. Yeah, ideas. Just listening to you speak, and I love how you write about this too. That and to your point, what you just said. If you have some resistance, not the good kind, not the kind that makes you create, but the kind that stops you from creating,
Yeah.
you can ask yourself about that. That can be one of your questions that you think about while you're sleeping. Like, what is it that's what is it that's stopping me? Or it's a really powerful tool to ask yourself a
It
question.
is a powerful tool. I have a whole book out on this, of course I would, called Sleep Thinking. And it's a general problem-solving tool. It's not just for creatives. Just to give you a quick example, I had a client whose husband had gotten one of those terrible cancer diagnoses, one of these fast-acting cancers, and he was going to die in a few months. And of course, she was devastated, but one of the things that she couldn't answer for herself was how to tell the kids, how to tell the adult kids about this. She just couldn't get it in her head the best way to do it. And so that was her sleep thinking question. How can I tell the kids? And it came to her through the sleep thinking process that she wanted to have a picnic at one of their favorite parks and tell them there. That is, she got an answer. But she allowed her sleeping brain to do the work. She couldn't really, trying to force an answer hadn't been working, but just turning it. And creatives have known this throughout time. A woman, Naomi Epple is her name, wrote a book called Writer's Dreaming, which came about because she was a literary escort. She would drive writers around when they would come to her part of Marin in the days of book tours. So she'd have a Stephen King in the car or somebody else in the car. And so she decided, since I have all of these people in the car, let me ask them something. And the question she asked them was, what do you dream about? So she did this book called Writer's Dreaming, but they didn't want to talk about their dreams. They wanted to talk about how they solved writing problems via sleep thinking. That was one of their main tools when they got stuck in a book. If they had a plot problem or something, rather than trying to force an answer, they just turned it over to their sleeping brain. And not necessarily the first night, but eventually they got the answer they were looking for.
So cool. So cool. So speaking of thinking, how do our thoughts and our ability to create connect?
Gigantically. Most people are saying things to themselves that don't serve them. And that's very different from other ways of talking about unproductive thinking. People are used to talking about negative thoughts or unproductive thoughts or other thoughts, untrue thoughts. But that precise way of designating thoughts as not serving you is the best way to think about thinking. Because lots of true thoughts don't serve us. Lots of true thoughts stop us in our tracks. For instance, if you're a writer and you go on Amazon and you see that there are 8 million books on Amazon, and you say to yourself, wow, there are a lot of writers. That sounds like an innocent, true thought, but it's not innocent at all, because 2 days later, you'll stop writing and you won't even know why. And it was because of being demoralized by all that competition. So even something as true as, wow, there are a lot of writers, which is abundantly true, has got to be disputed as a thought that serves. So creatives have to start this process of noticing what they're thinking, noticing what they're saying to themselves, and disputing those thoughts that don't serve them, which will be many, hundreds a day. And then substituting some kind of global affirmation, which might just sound like, let's get to work, or right here, right now, or everything's fine, that kind of thing. So that 3-step process, just to repeat it, is to hear what you're saying. Two of the most common things that people say nowadays to make sure they don't get to their work are, I'm too tired and I'm too busy. They sound true, don't they? Sure, we get tired, we get busy. They sure do sound true, but they can't be allowed to just sit there like that, or we won't get to our work. We have to realize that we have to append a big but there. We have to say, I'm tired, but I can get to my songwriting for 20 minutes. Yeah, I'm busy, but I can squeeze in 20 minutes of sketching. We can't let phrases like I'm too tired and I'm too busy just sit there. We have to dispute them. Because we're looking for outs, we let them just sit there. But then another day has passed, another week has passed, another month has passed, and whole years pass and we haven't gotten to our work, and we get disappointed in ourselves. So just to repeat some of the headlines of the things we've already said, the combination of a daily practice and disputing thoughts that don't serve you, those are probably two of the big deal things that a creative person can do.
I love that. Not just taking it as
gospel, as gospel.
Yeah, as gospel. Yeah, absolutely. I love how you put it, and it does seem like an innocent truth, and yet it's not, right? It's so what is it about the creative process that folks tend to find so daunting? We know what the excuses are, but what is it so daunting?
People have got it into their heads without knowing that they've got it into their heads that they want to get a guarantee before they start. They don't really want to get to work until they, quote, know what their book's about, or until they're somehow assured that it's going to be a good day creating. You can't have that guarantee. Let it go. The creative process has to come with mistakes and messes. The reality of process is that only a percentage of our work will be any good. Who wants to hear that? It's like nobody wants to hear that only a percentage of our work. Who wants to realize that we may have to spend 2 years on a book that doesn't work? That there's no way to avoid spending those 2 years. Who wants to hear that? That's the reality of process. The reality of process is that only a percentage of the things we do will work, and only a percentage of the percentage that works will be good, and only a smaller percentage will be excellent. That's what we're striving for, not just okay work. We want to do excellent work, and only a percentage of what we do will be excellent. So it takes a very mature attitude to understand that this is the truth of the matter. But if you think about it, how many of Bob Dylan's thousands of songs are wonderful? 28, 36, 44. It's some percentage of the whole. And pundits who claim to know will say that Beethoven's first, third, fifth, seventh, and ninth symphonies are better than his second, fourth, sixth, and eighth, but you can't do 9 without 8, you can't do 8 without 7, can't do 7 without, you can't skip the things that don't work. And that's how people waste a lot of time. They're trying to skip the things that don't work. You just got to do them, and if they don't work, they become part of your body of work. Not part of your in the world body of work, because you don't show those things that have not worked. But these are honorable things that you've tried, and if they don't work, so be it. The headline is you've got to show up and not attach to outcomes.
Absolutely. Show up and not attached to outcomes. They can't all be your greatest hit.
No, and by the way, there's no contradiction between having goals, dreams, aspirations, desires, all of that, and not attaching to outcomes. Those aren't contradictory ideas. I think it's a dance of attachment and detachment. We want to attach. If we don't put some juice in there, then there's no juice. So we want to care about the work, comma. We just can't hope for a guarantee for the work.
When I'm painting, if by chance I think this is a bad one, it's like, well, let's wait until we decide later. We plural now.
Yep.
And also I'm like, well, and if it is a bad one, let's hurry up, finish it up, and see what's the next painting. Maybe that one's going to be great. But really, to keep them moving is really like you say, like that dance.
Again, that's another place of being careful about self-talk, because you want to, what's called in psychosynthesis, which is a branch of psychology, you want to disidentify from temporal experiences. That's a fancy way of saying, you want to say the painting isn't working, not I'm an idiot. You don't want to take it upon yourself. You want to keep the thing out there separate from your identity. You're a perfectly wonderful person inside who can make really bad things sometimes. And so that's an important piece of the puzzle, is to watch out for that piece of self-talk where some kind of act becomes an indictment of the self. Something didn't work, it didn't work, but that should not be an indictment of the self.
Very important. Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. And on the subject of healing, it's all related, and you talk about or write about how creativity is connected to living your best life, and more specifically, you do really interesting work about creatives and anxiety. Can you speak about that connection some more?
Sure. Anxiety is the great silencer. Folks don't know that. They don't identify what's going on when they don't get to their easel as anxiety. But typically it is. Why is there so much anxiety threading through the creative process? For one big reason, for lots of reasons, but for one big reason that creatives don't recognize, and that is the creative process is one choice after another. That's what creating is. Put some red on, or should it be green? Or should my character go to Paris, or should she go to Barcelona? one choice after another. And choosing provokes anxiety. If you think about your own life, if you're trying to choose between, should I, buy the Toyota or the Honda, or should I, just any kind of choice provokes little tendrils of anxiety, not big anxiety necessarily, but just enough anxiety so that we do the number one thing we do when we experience anxiety, which is flee the encounter. If we're scared of flying, we don't go to airports, we go the other way. That's not where we decide to have our breakfast at the airport, we go someplace else. So if all of that choosing is daunting us and making us anxious, we're not going to get to the writing that day or the next day or the day thereafter. But we won't know that it was about anxiety. We'll have said something else to ourselves about my to-do list is so long. We will have said something else. So all of that choosing provokes anxiety, and going into the genuine unknown provokes anxiety. Artists will say, "Oh, I'm fine there. I love it, and I love it in the dark." And partly they do, but also partly they don't. All day long, we're supposed to get things right. That's our responsible nature. Drive on the correct side of the road, pick up our kids at 3, weed the lawn, all that stuff. That's appropriate. But then somehow there's this other time supposed to happen where we go into the darkness and have real visceral permission to make mistakes and messes in the darkness. And it's not so clear that everybody really likes that experience. So folks have to, have this kind of conversation with themselves about, wow, a lot of choosing. Okay, that's coming. I get it. A lot of choosing and a lot of darkness, a lot of not knowing. Is that okay? All that not knowing okay? Yes. It's got to be okay. The choosing has got to be okay, and the not knowing has got to be okay. Both of them have to be okay, comma. And what this cries out for is that every creative should have 1 or 2 or 3 anxiety management tools that work, portable ones, because a lot of folks have elaborate anxiety management tools like a 1-hour morning meditation or something, which keeps them calm while they're meditating. But that doesn't mean that it translates, that it's portable, that they actually stay calm when they have to talk to a literary agent or approach their novel. So whatever anxiety management tools you learn for yourself, and I think I covered 20 categories of them in my book, Mastering Creative Anxiety. So there are a ton of things to try. Whatever things you try and acquire, they have to be portable. You have to be able to use them right in the moment when you're feeling anxious, so that if you come to the end of a paragraph and you're not really ready to make the next choice, most writers will flee the encounter. They'll say, wow, I got some writing done. Let me go do my chores now. They won't notice that it's not being willing to face the next choice that's bothering them. But if you know that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to make a new choice now, then you can pull out one of your anxiety management strategies. Maybe it's just some deep breathing, or it might be just walking around your chair. That breaks what's called inhibited flight, which is a feature of anxiety. If we feel trapped, we get anxious. So if you're sitting there, whether you're at your easel or wherever you are, at your piano or if you're feeling trapped by the next choice to make, just get up and walk around. That's the kind of simple anxiety management tools I'm talking about, not elaborate 70-step whatevers, which we never use, but just something like a little breathing and a little walking around. Just as long as you have the context, as long as you're reminding yourself, wow, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. That's what's going on. It's not that some gigantic thing has just happened. I'm not calling myself an idiot. I'm not calling myself talentless. It's just a little bit of anxiety. Let me get up, make some popcorn. Takes 3 minutes and 20 seconds in my microwave. Let me make a little popcorn and come back. So that's a piece of the anxiety puzzle.
I really appreciate that, and the way that you specifically the way that you described it, this is part of the creative experience. It's not that, oh, I'm a super anxious person, I better stay away from creativity. It's on the contrary. It's part of the normal experience. Yeah,
it's part of it. And as you bring it up, let me just piggyback a thought. It's an elaborate thought, but we could spend a minute on it. In my theory of personality, which I have. I believe that personality is made up of three component parts: original personality, formed personality, and available personality. So original personality is that us that comes into the world already formed, already somebody. Every creature comes into the world already itself. If we've had kittens or puppies or kids, we know that every creature, one kitten's more skitterish, one kitten's more friendly, every animal is itself instantly, the second it comes out of the womb. What this means is that creatives may come out a little more sensitive, a little more anxious already, better reality tester, a little more this, a little more that. That will make that anxiety a lifelong challenge, not a mental disorder. That's not the way to think about it. If that extra anxiety is a feature of our original personality, we may have extra sadness as a feature of our original personality. There may be parts of us that we come into the world with that are going to make life a little more challenging than life is for the next person. We have to meet those challenges. And not with the chemicals of the psychiatric world, because these are not pseudo-medical conditions. These are not medical things. These are original personality things that I'm talking about. And they can't be met by a pill. If you come into the world a little more sensitive, there's no pill for that. There's no pill. There ought not to be any pill for that. It's just that we have to figure out how to live given our natural proclivities.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really landing for me. And I know I also have a degree in philosophy, and we just how useful and practical that is. And yet at the same time, you you have your own philosophy, you develop it, you write about it, and you teach from that angle. And it's so useful. You break it down into steps that you can take, and sort of a clarity that gives us some perspective. I really appreciate that.
Let me just pull out two ideas from the philosophy that I put together that I call Curism, that can be found in a book called Lighting the Way. Just two ideas, but they're kind of game-changing ideas if they land for people. One is the idea of a necessary paradigm shift from life having a singular purpose to the idea of multiple life purposes. So many people are looking for the purpose to life, and there ain't none. And they can spend decades going to India or reading, following some guru, or doing one thing and another, looking for the purpose to life. They're just our life purpose choices. Or to say that more simply, they're just the things we hold as important. We get to decide what's important, and they will be multiple things. There'll be things like creating and relationships and career and activism and service, all the normal things we could name. Those are things that are important to human beings. But it's really important that folks shift from that idea of there's something to find, the purpose to life, to the idea that they have to stay put and identify their multiple life choices. So that's A. And B is a similar paradigm shift from the idea of seeking meaning, as if meaning were out there, as if it were some kind of lost object, lost wallet, or lost purse. Where'd it go? Where'd meaning go? To the idea of making meaning, to the idea that it's on our shoulders to make meaning investments, seize meaning opportunities, to be in charge of the meaning in our life. And just to stay with that idea 1 second more, because it's very important. If you understand that meaning is merely a subjective psychological experience of a certain sort, which it is, it's just a certain kind of experience that comes and goes. Since it comes and goes naturally, you wouldn't expect to be joyous every moment or anything any moment, nor would you expect life to be meaningful every moment. Yet people somehow think that when they're bereft of meaning, something gigantic has happened. Nothing special has happened. Meaning left again, and it will come back again. And if you can get that vision of how meaning works, then you will understand how it is that you can sit working on your novel, even if you're not experiencing it as a meaningful moment. To say that differently, if one of your life purposes is to create, then you go create whether or not you're experiencing meaning from that creating. And this frees you up from being so connected to, is this meaningful, is that meaningful, and all of that, and much more focused on your personal life purpose choices and getting to them in a daily way.
So good, absolutely. And I was just remembering the other day how you say, you create where you're at. You bring where you're at. That's where you create. You don't wait till I create until I'm happy. I create until I'm full of meaning. I create until I'm or when
Now,
only when you create where you are, where you are.
you have to take your life seriously. You have to decide that you matter and your efforts matter. The analogy or metaphor I use often in this context is in the days before D-Day, we don't care what Eisenhower's mood is, whether he's anxious or sad or anything. We just need him to get the invasion right. We need him to do his work, please. Got 200,000 troops sitting on 1,000 ships bobbing in the channel. He's got stuff to do. Now, we don't experience our life like that, like an invasion, like D-Day, but we should. We should act like what we're doing matters to us that way. It matters to us the way it mattered to Eisenhower where to drop his 20,000 paratroops. Just that, those kinds of big things. He had big things, so do we have big things. They're small to the world, perhaps, but they're our real big things, and we want to act like they are.
Dr. Maisel, thank you so much for all the inspiration, for the practical steps, and for the bigger philosophical all of it, really. Thank you. Is there something that you'd like to leave us with? One more word of inspiration.
Well, I don't know about a last word. I would just invite folks to come visit me at ericmaisel.com and learn more about what I do, and maybe we can play together.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, you have a downloadable something like there's a free gift that the audience can.
Yeah, if you get my newsletter, there's a nice free gift of I think it's a sampler of chapters from different books of mine. So yeah, come get my newsletter and come enjoy the gift.
Thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you. And remember to keep it creative and have a great rest of your day. Bye.